brain. This mushy organ is what differentiates us from plants, and it's also ruining our lives. Well, it's time to do something about it. We could just try cutting it out, but I don't think we can survive that. So maybe we can make an effort and just try to make our brain again. This is misleading. It was never our brain. Our brain was never working for us. It was always working against us. What am I talking about? Let's find out. Together. I also don't know. So many folks here who have brains, good brains. Look at how beautiful those brains are. But it's a sad thing, isn't it? You know, so many people with brains, but these brains are not yours. Your brains were stolen during the Obama administration. But don't you worry, folks. We want our brains back, and we're gonna get them. We're gonna get our brains back. We're gonna be winning so many brains. You're gonna get sick of winning. Make your brain again. Well, that was silly. The fleshy part of our brain is not mysterious. People have been cutting out cadaver brains for centuries, fiddling with the fatty organ, drawing cute pictures of brains and of faces with open heads with visible brains in them. But these pictures can't help us figure out the psychology that results from this mushy mass. Like what happens to our brains when we open our eyes and start interacting with people and things around us. And that's what we are here to talk about. Cognitive dissonance. Cogdis is a behavioral theory that describes determinants of attitudes and beliefs, the internalization of values, the consequence of decisions, the effect of disagreement among persons, and other important psychological processes, according to this paper of literature that I can't share with you because it's copyrighted. Let's break it down. Everything that we know about ourselves, our behavior, and our surroundings is called cognition. This is according to Professor Leon Festinger, who coined the term and conducted a bulk of experiments supporting his theory. It's worth mentioning that in the case of our brain, there's not much difference between knowing and believing, or assuming, or pretending to know. So don't give the word know too much credence. I think that's good advice in general. What we know can either comport or not comport with reality. It's still gonna be cognition though. Dissonance is the opposite of consonance. Helpful, isn't it? I'm helping. Dissonance is lack of harmony, usually describing musical notes, but Festinger uses it to describe the lack of harmony between two cognitions. Here's the thing that's important to mention. Two cognitions can only be dissonant or consonant with each other if they relate to each other. If it's just two relatively unrelated cognitions, at least if they're unrelated to you as the mind owner, dissonance will not occur. Apples and oranges, man. Apples and oranges. No, you're not gonna need a therapist appointment after this. Why would you think that? Now listen up as I tell you why you are messed up. Or better yet, I'm gonna let Professor Leon Festinger, the creator, the source, the god, tell it himself. Cognitive dissonance can be seen as an antecedent cognition, which leads to activity oriented towards dissonance reduction, just as hunger leads to activity oriented towards hunger reduction. This basically means that cognitive dissonance is an unpleasant experience that, just like hunger, leads to actions that reduce the unpleasantness. So what's the food in this metaphor? I'm your brain and I don't feel comfortable right now, so I'm gonna do whatever it takes. Lie, cheat, take people hostage, murder. But mostly I'm going to remove your knowledge and add some stupid knowledge and generally yell at you for making me feel bad. I'll do anything. To feel better again. The food is fuckery, isn't it? The food is total and utter fuckery. Yeah, once the cogdis does its dissing, the fuckery begins. You think I'm joking, but wait till you hear this. Generally speaking, to reduce cognitive dissonance, your brain can remove dissonant cognitions, add new consonant cognitions, reduce the importance of dissonant cognitions, and increase the importance of consonant cognitions. Remember, a cognition can be something that you know about yourself, your behavior, or your surroundings. So for instance, by removing one of the dissonant cognitions entirely, you no longer know something, or no longer believe in something. Your mind was changed. Congratulations! Your brain just did the least slimy thing. But it gets worse from here, because what it can do instead is throw every possible consonant cognition excuse into the pile with the dissonant cognition to give it support, because more is better. Or remove a bunch of cognitions from the other dissonant cognition to make it weaker. The brain can also alleviate dissonance by reducing the importance of one cognition or increasing the importance of another. If, for instance, you believe in something so strongly that it's the most important thing to you, no amount of counter-information will have the chance to stand up to it. Some cognitions are too resistant to change, and when some beliefs are absolutely unchangeable, well, that's what zealotry is. Now we know how our brain gets some peace through fuckery, but how do we find ourselves at war with ourselves in the first place? There are 4 situations or paradigms that can lead to experiencing cognitive dissonance. 3 of the 4 paradigms are solved through adding or removing supporting cognitions of one of the dissonant attitudes or beliefs. For instance, in case of decision-making paradigm, where you feel cognitive dissonance by making a decision between 2 choices. Dissonance is reduced by removing negative cognitions from the chosen choice, adding negative cognitions to the discarded choice, adding positive cognitions to the chosen choice, or removing positive cognitions from the discarded choice. Think of positive cognitions as pros and negative cognitions as cons. The harder the choice, meaning the more pros there are to the discarded choice, or the more cons there are to the chosen choice, the bigger the dissonance. For the effort justification paradigm, dissonance arises when we are performing an unpleasant task to achieve a desired outcome. And if the ratio of task unpleasantness to desirability of outcome is high, the dissonance is accordingly high. It's like when the toilet is clogged. You need to engage in some serious self-convincing to deal with that shit. Things really go down the toilet when the induced compliance paradigm occurs, which is when we are treated with a punishment or are incentivized with a reward to do or say something that goes against our previously held beliefs and attitudes. The punishment or the reward is the added cognition that reduces the dissonance. The bigger the punishment or the reward, or the smaller your departure from your attitudes is, the less of a hypocrite you are. The smaller the dissonance is. But the real fuckery begins when we are presented with information inconsistent with our beliefs or attitudes. The shit really hits the fan, last time I promise. When this belief is deeply held and the contrary information clearly comports with reality, the dissonance is astronomical and can lead to some pretty crazy reduction techniques. If you don't change your belief as new information is presented, remember, that's an actual option, cognitive dissonance will need reducing. And we might do that by misperception or misinterpretation of the information, rejection of the information, seeking support from those who agree with our belief, or attempting to persuade others to accept our belief. Fuckery. Look, cognitive dissonance is not always a bad thing. If we were to constantly agonize over making decisions or doing something we don't want to do, we'd be miserable all the goddamn time. The modern life comes with some awesome perks, but it's also not very kind to our brains, which struggle sometimes. So post hoc rationalizing why you chose this job over the other, or gathering reasons to do your dishes, this is just you lying to yourself a little bit so that you don't collapse. But the other stuff we should probably handle a little better. We could be better at recognizing when the reward we get for doing something is not worth it, or when our beliefs are gibberish that one person said once and now we're fighting for it tooth and nail. Some beliefs are just unjustifiably deeply held. I'm talking about you, evolutionary psychology. The belief disconfirmation paradigm, if handled poorly, is the thing that's ruining our lives the most, in my opinion. Especially in modern times when information is so readily available and it's so reliably susceptible to our biases. We can deal with this by giving it a real thought, do research into the presented information, and possibly refute it. I omitted some nuance while talking about belief disconfirmation. It's totally possible that your deeply held belief is correct and the contradicting information is wrong, when it's not very clear that the information is actually real. Sussing out which is which requires so much work, and we're not always motivated to do this. But we can start becoming better at dealing with the belief disconfirmation by being more introspective about our response to new information. If you are wondering what all the winking was about, it was just me pointing out that in this script I'm engaging in an activity that increases cognitive dissonance. To write this text, I use a copyrighted paper, an illegal uploaded book, and Sci-Hub. My general attitude is that it's not okay to steal when you can avoid it, and I can rationalize it by saying that I'm expanding my knowledge while not being limited by my economical status, and that I'm spreading that knowledge to people who need it. But once in a while I get that feeling I'm taking other people's work without compensating them for it. I'm making content out of other people's work. But it gets worse. The modern society we live in makes it easier for us to alleviate cognitive dissonance by immediately providing cognitions to support our beliefs. Sometimes those cognitions are built directly into the dissonant cognition. For fuck's sake, the Sci-Hub slogan is "Everyone is a pirate, even scientists." They are giving you permission to engage in illegal and possibly immoral activity by assuring you everyone does it. You don't even need to seek support from those who agree with your action. It's there already. And it's not ruining your lives to use Sci-Hub, but it's ruining your lives to hold beliefs that are potentially rubbish. And it's ruining your lives engaging in constant support of those beliefs. I'm talking about your religion, among other things. It impedes our personal and societal progress to engage in this cognition trading for beliefs that aren't even ours in the first place. It leaves us blind to our inner mechanisms, to give so much power to a unique feeling. It wastes our intellect to cope around the belief instead of making the necessary changes that would allow us to be better. It ruins our lives, not the cognitive dissonance itself. The cog is gonna diss, but the way we choose to reduce it. Yes, the society makes it harder. One needs to be brave to go against the grain. But isn't this the type of behavior we admire in others when other people are radically themselves? Why are we so scared to become our own heroes? I'll leave you with some food for thought, as I know you are still so hungry. This is the story of Dr. Robert Knox, a medical doctor and an anatomist who lived and worked in the 18th century. In those times, if a doctor wanted to study anatomy, they could only get cadavers of convicted prisoners, suicide cases, and deceased orphans, which I guess didn't happen that often, and the supply was way lower than the demand. So some doctors, being way thirstier for knowledge than for social and moral duty, were paying for grave robbery. But Dr. Knox, unknowingly, but also not asking any questions, paid for something far worse. William Burke and William Hare, the two Williams, killed 16 people and sold their corpses to Knox for his anatomy class. The two Williams were caught and convicted, but Knox was never prosecuted, to the dismay of people in the town where the murders occurred. Knox was cancelled, and by that I mean he lost some of his formal income, his property was vandalized a bit, and his anatomy classes became more popular than ever, allowing him to open a private school and generate income, while continuing purchasing illegal corpses from shady people. Now, this story is interesting to me because Knox maintained plausible deniability by not seeking the truth about where corpses come from. Surely, as a medical doctor, he wouldn't find moral justification to kill people just so that he could teach other doctors on the freshest cadavers. Although some people would find that justifiable, I guess. Yikes. But Knox might have surrounded his desire for fresh corpses with cognition supporting his desire and its utility. Maybe things like, students need to learn how to operate on corpses in order to save lives, while ignoring cognitions against his actions. This and many other cognitions, small lies, big omissions, might have made the cognition of an illegal and likely immoral act of paying for grave robbery, or worse, smaller, less supported by other cognitions, and therefore less significant. This is speculation, of course. We can't know for sure that Knox experienced cognitive dissonance, but we do have modern research showing that people will go to great lengths to remain morally good in their eyes. The point is, we should examine our cognitive dissonances more closely if we want to take control over our brain function and make better choices in life. Too often we lie to ourselves about the validity of our actions, and although our brain is pathetically incapable of remaining in conflict, it's also limber and malleable, and you can have more control over it. And finally, I will leave you with a musical number. Haven't they suffered enough?
No, more suffering.
This was my cognitive dissonance video. I know that you know some people who really need to see this video. Be a good friend, send it to them. If you're the friend, welcome. Thanks for subscribing, wink wink. You seem to be on an important journey, and this video is one more snack for that journey.